All right, so let's talk about Wheelock chapter 3. In this chapter, we are dealing with second declension masculine nouns and adjectives and the concept of apposition. And then we'll just touch on word order briefly. So, second declension masculine nouns and adjectives. What we said in the last chapter about nouns and adjectives in general is we were just doing an introduction to nouns. This holds true in the chapter that we're dealing with here. What's new in this chapter is that we're introducing a new declension pattern known as the second declension. And in the second declension, the final stem vowel is an O, whereas it was an A in first declension. That O in the second declension is obscured in a few situations. It's either weakened to a U, or it gets, as I like to describe it, swallowed up by the case ending. So in second declension nouns, we are typically looking at gendered nouns in masculine or neuter grammatically. So we'll cover masculine nouns here. Next chapter, neuter. As you remember, first declension nouns are typically feminine, although there are some masculine first declension nouns as well. That also in second declension, you can find some feminine forms also, but we won't really tackle that here. Well, let's look at the pattern. Okay, second declension nouns are going to follow a predictable pattern, and I've given you the case endings here. Remember, what we're dealing with is actually in this chart the stem vowel and the case endings added. So these are really combination forms. So let's go through these real quickly here. The nominative singular is us, which is from os, where the o has weakened to the u. So you'll see us most of the time, and we get amicus as our form here for the friend or a friend. And then we have e for the genitive singular, and amici of the friend. O, and that's dative singular, amico, to or for the friend. For accusative singular, and this is really was with the o weakened to a u here, and our form amicum, the friend. O here is remember, dative and ablative are identical to each other. Amico, by, with, or from the friend, using these keywords here for ablative. And then here we actually do have a separate vocative form where the stem vowel O it changes to an E stem vowel for the vocative. And that is and then amique, O friend. On the plural forms, we have E for nominative plural, and amici, the friends, orum, and that's genitive plural, amicorum, of the friends, dative plural, is, amicis, to or for the friends, os, accusative plural, amicos, the friends, ablative plural, is, again, dative and ablative are the same, amicis, by, with, from the friends, and then e for vocative plural, amici. Here, the nominative and the vocative are identical as they are in most other situations. We do have that difference in the singular here between us and though. Okay, so amici, O friends. As I've mentioned, the stem vowel really ends with an O, and that O is weakened to U here. So just as a reminder, stem vowel is really an O. It weakens to U here, and then it's obscured by some of these case endings. Well, actually, it weakens the O here, and then it's obscured by the case endings here in the genitive and in the nominative, dative, and ablative plural, and then the vocative, of course. These have the same case endings. But the reason I just want to point out that the stem vowel is O is because it does make sense of these other forms, like the dative singular, ending with the long O, ablative singular, genitive, orum, and accusative, plural, os. And in the exact same situation here in the plural, we have first declensions where it's autumn, right? And the difference between autumn and aurum is the fact that there are different stem vowels in these nouns. First declensions have a stem vowels, and second declension have o. Okay. The same thing with the accusative plural. We had as, recall, versus os here for second declension. All right. Let's see. Let me just go down here real quickly. We'll make a few comments, and then we'll do a song to work on memorization. The masculine form of the adjective large or great is magnus. Magnus. And remember, magnus means large or great. We learned magna for the first declension adjective. This is the masculine singular and nominative form. And because it's following second declension in its masculine adjectival form, it's going to be declined exactly like amicus is. So basically, take magnus, you drop the us, and then you can add the other endings that you see according to what we saw with amicus, and you will have the exact same form for the endings. Okay. Now let's introduce ourselves to a memorization song here, and as I think I've mentioned before, in my kids' homeschooling with classical conversations, they used some songs for memory work, and I remember hearing them. My wife often did the memory work with the kids, but I remember hearing these tunes and think you'll find them helpful. With second declension masculine forms, we will use the tune Jingle Bells. We will use the tune Jingle Bells. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh, o'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Okay, so hopefully you know that tune well. All right, so I'll use my hand here to point to what we're doing. Okay, so you can listen to me sing and then maybe sing together with me. Us, e, o, o, e. Us, e, o, o, e. Us, e, o, e. Singular second declension. E, autumn, is, os, is, e. E, autumn, is, os, is, e. E, autumn, is, os, is, e. Plural second declension. All right. Maybe you'd like to sing this in unison with me, and maybe you can harmonize. Ready? Go. Us, e, o, e. Us, e, o, e. Us, e, o, e. Singular for second declension. E, autumn, is, os, is, e. E, autumn, is, os, is, e. E, autumn, is, os, is, e. Plural second declension. Well done. All right. So let's talk about 1.5 here. There are some second declension nouns that are masculine in Latin that have lexical forms that do not end with us, but with er. And we can call them er nouns or nouns. And technically, the noun stem appears to end with ro, okay, with an r and then an o. But in the nominative singular, you would expect to add the final s for the case ending, but that final s case ending was not used. And then the o stem vowel ends up dropping out. Okay, and so you're left with the r at the end. Now there are two types of nouns. All right, there's the type of noun in number 1 here, 151, where the e is part of the stem, and so with a form like pueros. Okay, now this is an artificial form, and that's why there's an asterisk here. In linguistics, we use an asterisk for a theoretical or a hypothetical form that doesn't really exist in the language itself. And even here, the S was not actually used. So I put it here just to show you that this is what we would have expected. We have puero with an S, which should have been the case ending. That case ending was not used, so we have puero. And then the O drops out, and so we're left with puer. And that's our lexical form for the word for boy, puer. Okay? Now, then there are er nouns where the E is not part of the stem, but the E is added for the sake of helping with pronunciation. So here's a word, agros, and again, this S wasn't actually added as a case ending. And so with the S not being there, we have agra, and then the O drops out from the stem vowel. We're left with agra, agra, agra. Okay? You try to pronounce that. That's really difficult. And so an E vowel is stuck in here between these last two consonants to break up the consonant cluster, and we get ager, ager. Now, what's interesting about this is when the E is added to break up the consonant cluster, it gets dropped later when we add case endings, whereas puer, the E is actually part of the stem, and that's why it's retained throughout the forms. All right, so let's just take a real quick look at the forms of puer and ager in the case system. So let's start with boy, puer. Ready? You repeat after me. Puer, pueri, puero, puerum, puero, puer. And notice what happens with ager, the field. Ager, agri, agro, agrum, agro, ager. So we have the er endings on both of these, and notice nominative and vocative are the same. Here we do not see a distinction between the forms in vocative. But notice that the E stays in puer, it's gone in agri. And this is why knowing the genitive case ending can be helpful to determining what the real stem of a noun is. All right? And that's why you're always given the nominative singular and then the genitive singular following in your lexical forms. Let's go ahead and fill out the chart here with the adjective large, just to show you what it would look like for the attributive adjective to follow these nouns in their proper case gender number. Magnus, magni, magno, magnum, magno, magne. All right, and then the plural forms. We have pueri, puerorum, pueris, pueros, pueris, pueri. And then ager becomes agri, agrorum, agris, agros, agris, agri. Again, nominative and vocative are the same. The dative and ablative are identical to each other as well. Our adjective, magni, magnorum, magnis, magnos, magnis, magni. Okay. Just some final comments here on the forms. We need to be aware that some of the case endings are ambiguous and could stand for two or more. Okay, could be two or more possibilities. And when that's the case, pardon the pun, you have to let grammatical and semantic context reign when trying to determine which it is. You'll notice, for example, that sometimes you have the ending E, okay, the long I. There are actually three possibilities for what this represents. This could be genitive masculine singular. It could also be nominative masculine plural, and it could be vocative masculine plural. So how will you know which it is? Well, look at the sentence and check the grammatical context and the semantic context. If you have a plural verb, for example, and then you've got this E ending up at the front of the sentence, there's a good possibility that that's a nominative plural subject. And then you might make this form with E the subject of the plural verb. But if you try that and semantically it doesn't make sense, and maybe there's another nominative plural noun as well, then this form with E may be a genitive masculine singular, or it may be vocative masculine plural. So you just need to look at the rest of the sentence and check the surrounding context. All right, number 2 here, 162. Only the vocative singular of second declension masculine us nouns and adjectives, only in those do we have a different ending for the vocative there. Okay, so we don't use the identical nominative form. We actually switch to the stem vowel E at the end. But with ER, nouns, their nominative and vocative forms do follow the rule of being identical. Okay, so just as an example, we have amicus for nominative singular, but vocative singular amice. Okay, we changed to that. But puer has the identical form for nominative and vocative. So just wanted you to see that laid out here this way. Now, as far as attributive adjectives go, in second declension, they will match their nouns in case, gender, number, as we saw with first declension. Usually, the endings will match the spelling, but sometimes the endings will be spelled differently, even though the attributive adjective is in fact matching case, gender, number. And why would that be the case? Let me just draw your attention to a couple of examples to help you see what we're talking about. And we'll start with, we're looking at some contrast here. So think about the nominative masculine singular form of the noun and what the corresponding attributive adjective would look like. Amicus here, followed by magnus. Okay, notice these are spelled the same at the end. Why? Because these are both following the second declension pattern, right? And that's great. So we have a match here. Look at puer magnus. Here I have the us ending for nominative masculine singular, but puer does not match that ending. Why? Well, they are both second declension, but this is an er noun and this is an us noun, right? And er nouns behave differently in the nominative singular. They don't use the case ending or the o stem vowel. All right, so that's why we get a difference in spelling, even though puer and magnus are actually both the same case gender number. Now, we can just change the nominative vocative here, leave the masculine singular. And I want you to notice again that with amicus, we get amice in vocative, and the magnus form matches magne, so amice magne, so this is oh great friend. But notice that puer magne in vocative masculine singular does not have that matching ending. And why is that? Again, it's the difference between us nouns and nouns, right? Puer follows the pattern, and in the or noun pattern, nominative and vocative are the same, whereas in the us pattern, they are different from each other. Okay? So, on the other hand, the adjective magnus, it's an us form, and it's always going to then behave like an us noun does in its declension pattern, no matter what type of noun is being modified. Now, this next set of examples is even more interesting and perhaps even more striking. Look at the nominative masculine singular. We have amicus magnus, so there we've already seen that. That's a great friend or a big friend. But look at the next one here on the right. I have agricola magnus. So I have the us noun because this is in fact masculine singular nominative, but notice agricola doesn't have us at all. It has an a here. What's going on here? Well, the reason these are spelled differently is because agricola follows first declension. Okay, it's still nominative masculine singular, but it's a first declension type of nominative masculine singular. What do we learn the nominative masculine singular looks like in first declension? Well, porta, right, is a feminine first declension noun, and nauta is a masculine first declension noun, but they end with an na, and that's what we get here, even though it's nominative masculine singular. But magnus is an us adjective and in its masculine form, and so it has to follow the second declension. Okay, so we're going to see spelling mismatches because they're different declension patterns, even though they are the same case gender number. All right, so if I were to put amicus magnus into accusative case and leave it masculine singular, I get amicum, there's the ending, and magnum. So there they do match spelling, but with the first declension noun agricola, I get agricolam magnum. And notice the A is here because it's first declension. The U is here because it's second declension, but they are both accusative masculine singular. They do match case, gender, number like they're supposed to. When I say they match case, gender, number, they have the same grammatical case, gender, number, even if they're not spelled the same way. Okay, a final comment here about our forms. And that is, if you have second declension masculine nouns ending in ius, like Filius, son, and Vergilius, Virgil, and then also the possessive adjective meus, my, whenever we have a vocative singular ending, we're going to use the long I here, and actually I've got a mistake here. This was supposed to be E, right? So our vocative singular form, we might have expected the e, right? Because that's vocative singular case ending, and instead we'll get the single long I. So I've just given you this little expression to maybe help you remember. If I want to say, "Oh, my son Virgil," it's "O mi fili Vergili." All right? "O mi fili Vergili." So, "Oh, my son Virgil," not "me file Vergile," but with these long single I's. All right, now the lesson mentions apposition, and I like to describe apposition this way. When two nouns try to fill the same function slot and share the same referent, the second noun is said to be an apposition to the first noun. When I say same referent, I mean the two nouns are referring to the same thing, the same entity. I like to call the first noun the anchor and the second noun the appositive. And when we're describing the appositive, we say that it is an apposition to the first noun. Sometimes we can describe it using the adjective appositional. All right? So as such, the appositive, the noun in apposition to the anchor, renames or recharacterizes the first noun. In Latin and other languages that have case, the appositive shares the same case as its anchor. So if the first noun's in the accusative case, the appositive that renames it will be in the accusative case as well. Gender and number are often the same, but not necessarily the same. And as we read sentences, we can come to see examples of where they might differ. But the important thing is that the case remains the same. All right, so here are some English sentences to help you think about the concept of apposition. My brother Charlie struck out. What is the verb? Struck out. What is the subject? My brother. And Charlie is renaming the brother, and they share the same referent. And in effect, they're both trying to function as the subject of struck out. I could give you two sentences. My brother struck out and Charlie struck out. And those sentences semantically mean the same thing because my brother and Charlie are the same person. Okay? Now, what's interesting here for our point is that in Latin, my brother would be nominative because it's the subject. What case would the appositive Charlie be in? Well, because Charlie's an apposition to brother and brother's nominative, Charlie would have to be nominative as well. In the second sentence, the pitcher hit my brother Charlie. My brother is the direct object. Charlie is an apposition, renaming the direct object here, whereas in the first sentence, Charlie was renaming the subject. So what case would brother be in Latin? It would be accusative case, and then Charlie, the appositive, would likewise be an accusative case. You see how that works? And so in our Latin example, we have Gaium filium meum in agro video. So I see Gaius, my son, in the field. Notice that I have an accusative case ending here in Gaium, right? That's accusative. The appositive here, filius meum, then has to share the accusative case. And you'll see that we're using the accusative case endings here as well. Accusative masculine singular. So the verb is video, I see. Gaium, my direct object brother, or excuse me, my direct object, and then my son is an apposition. I see Gaius, my son. And then in agro is in plus the ablative case in the field. All right, last thing we'll say here about the chapter is that Latin has a word order that's general. And generally, what you can expect, all other things being equal, is the subject to come first with any of its modifiers, adjectives, or prepositional phrases, followed by the indirect object if there is one, with its modifiers, followed by the direct object if there is one, and its modifiers, followed by adverbials, either adverbs or prepositional phrases that are adverbial, and then a verb likes to be last as a general rule. So here is an example of that. Puer, puellai, bellai, rosam dat. Okay, so in the Latin word order, we have the subject, the boy, puellai, bellai, that's my indirect object, to the pretty girl, rosam, that's my direct object, a rose, and then dat is my verb. Okay, and the subject is puer, so the boy is doing the giving here. So we could now rearrange the English words to make good English sense. The boy is giving the pretty girl a rose. Now, that's general word order. That does not mean that the word order is invariant. In fact, word order can be very flexible in Latin because case endings are what indicate the function of words. I don't need word position like in English. In English, subjects go first, objects go after the verb. John ate the steak, right? And if I switch the place of steak and John, and I say the steak ate John, then we giggle because what's going on there is English word order is grammatical, not Latin. It's the case endings that indicate the function. And so when we see differences from the general word order, it's because the speaker or writer is trying to reflect things like contrast or emphasis. Okay? All right.